Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're glad you took some time to be with us this evening. I am Alyssa DeFilippo, and I manage Parents Helping Parents program called Connections California, and that is our online statewide resource and information hub for transition to adulthood and adult services. You wanted to be at building and maintaining college readiness skills, you are at the right place. We welcome back to the Connections California screen Dr. Marci Schwartz, who is the founder of Thrive College Counseling in Los Gatos and an adjunct clinical associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Stanford University School of Medicine. That's a lot. Dr. Schwartz founded Thrive College Counseling with the goal of supporting teens with neurodiversity make the sometimes difficult but important transition to adulthood. Thrive College Counseling works with students to discover their best fit to ensure a successful transition to the college or program of their choice after high school. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Beatrice, for interpreting. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Schwartz. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. So we're discussing building and maintaining college readiness skills. And what we're going to go over today is I'm going to go over a little bit about the work I do so you have context for my perspective of where I'm coming from with this. We're going to discuss how high school is different from college. And that's really to offer a foundational set of knowledge that we're all on the same page about why readiness is important. We have to kind of know where we are and know where we're going in order to kind of prepare to go there. And then we're going to go over a number of college readiness skills to highlight. So just to give context about this work that I do, I've been working with as a therapist for many years. But it's always been with individuals with a neurodiversity, some type of learning challenge that they're navigating. And that role has always been primarily as a therapist. But in my role as therapist, I would work with families and students where they would go off to college, and I saw their struggle when not everybody struggled, but there were some struggles that students navigated in college that was very challenging. So I decided to transition from being a therapist to being a college counselor and really kind of dive into this area of the transition to college and how do you find the right fit and really helping and supporting students to navigate that space. And so in 2016, I became a college counselor, and part of becoming a college counselor is, at least in the work that I do, is really understanding disability services and how those work in colleges, really becoming much more effective in communicating about college readiness skills. And touring college campuses has been a big part of what I do because it allows me to have that knowledge about a college campus and meet a student and talk with them about fit, what they can expect there, and things like that. So that's the work that I had and have transitioned to. Um, Here is just our beginning part to give us some foundational skills. So in high school, all of the laws and the way things are structured is to focus on the academic success of a student. So all the adults pretty much get together and figure out what do we need to do and put into place to support this particular student in being successful while in K to 12. And the school does have primary responsibility to arranging those accommodations, which might be a social skills program within the school or a study skills section. Um, Parents do have access to the students' records and they can participate in the accommodations. They can advocate for their student as needed. Teachers are able to modify a curriculum and assignments, which means that if the whole class is doing one thing, but the student is struggling or for a number of reasons. So say everybody's doing all 20 math problems on a homework assignment, a modification might be that they just do half of them, or they might read a different book in school. Um, teachers, in high school, oh, it's mostly in high school, but tutoring and study support is offered through an IEP, and it's kind of overseen by the adults to make sure that the student is getting the academic support that they need. Um, and that's the structure of how things work in high school. So it's really about focusing on what can we do to make the student successful. And that changes in college, and it's no longer about the success of the student, but it's about offering the student access to supports and access to a curriculum. And in college, the student bears the primary responsibility of those accommodations. So as I was saying before, like the adults get in the room and they're all figuring out what can they do to offer supportive opportunities for the student to be successful. That is not, there's nobody looking at the student in college. The student needs to say, I know what I need, and I'm going to go and make sure I have access to those accommodations. Parents do not have access to the students' records without written consent, and so there are opportunities to do that. Um, which is a different topic, but it is possible for the parents to be able to have access, but the student needs to give them that access. Professors are not required to modify curriculums or alter assignments. There are some, it's a little bit gray in some areas about what colleges will offer as an accommodation or not. Oftentimes, students I work with are receiving extensions on handing in an assignment. So they get extra time on a test, which is fine. That's going to take place in college as well. But extra time on handing in assignments or delaying taking a test because the student's just not ready is not a common accommodation that colleges are going to offer. And they will not change typically the curriculum to modify it to meet a student's learning needs because the college is there to graduate a student in whatever major they have. And when the college says Sam graduated with a math degree from San Jose State, it's holding up a standard. And if that student didn't meet that standard, the school really can't say that the student earned that degree. So it's just a little bit more nuanced in what each college or university will agree to modify, if anything, in a college setting. And tutoring does not fall under disability services. Tutoring in college is accessible to anyone. There is, the math lab in a college that's open 24 hours sometimes. There's the writing center, and students just need to independently say, I need help with my writing, and go access that. So it's more dispersed and not as organized of a supportive environment for the student. Another important thing that's not on the slide, but I think it's helpful for us to think about, it's a big change in between high school and college, in that in high school, the focus of the teachers is to teach the students and to take some responsibility to make sure that they're learning the material. In college, the professors, their job is to teach, but they are not spending time making sure that the student is learning the material. Now, if the student goes to office hours and talks with the professor, of course, they're going to help. But their main job is to teach, and it's the student's job to learn. And if they're struggling with their learning, it's up to them to seek help. And so that's a big difference that I think it's important for people to be aware of. So that's the foundation for which we're coming from, the transition from high school to college. And now we're going to look at readiness skills and how do I get myself and my student ready for the expectations of college. And a way to do it is to take a strengths-based approach, which would mean understanding your strengths as a student and to know where you excel. I'm really good at math, for example. I'm not, but you might be saying that. And that may be a strength. And so you're identifying your strength, but you also want to identify your challenges. And you might be very good at math, but you might really be struggling with organizational skills, for example. And so you really want to think about are my challenges impacting my ability to shine with my strengths? And so, if your math grade is not as awesome as it could be based on your skill set and your capacity, then that may be an example about how your challenges, maybe your grade is lower because you didn't hand in your assignments. And that's an example about how your challenges might be interfering with your strengths. And so we want to be able to understand our challenges, not because we want to overly focus on them, but because we want to clear the way so that you can shine with your strengths. Um, and so a way to do that for students is to have conversations with parents and your support team, teachers, and figuring out what it is that you feel like you can do so that you can build not only continue to build your strengths, but manage and navigate your challenges so they don't impact your ability to shine with your strengths. And that's the overriding goal that we want to have for folks as they're navigating this process of college readiness in the transition. And so we can look at some college readiness skills. So independent living skills. Personal hygiene is a very important thing if you're going to be living in the dorm. Well, regardless, but it's a very important skill to have. There's going to be an expectation that you can shower without prompting, brush your teeth, just manage your physical self. If you're not feeling well, do you know I'm not feeling well, I should go to the doctor, or at least call a parent, or know how to take your temperature. So the overall self-care for independence is going to be important. Being able to clean your room or take care of yourself. I ran out of toothpaste, I should probably go get more toothpaste. Like you're in charge in college when if you're living in the dorm of all of these aspects of your health and well-being. And so it's important to practice those while you're in high school. Um, I will say that some students, and it's a very reasonable path, that they go to community college or they go to a four-year college, but they live at home. You're still going to need to get these skills. And so it's not so much your timeline, but it's still, I'm just trying to highlight these are skills that are important to practice actively while you're in high school. I work with a lot of students who will say, I'm not going to do that now because I know I can do it, but I'll do it when I'm in college. Like I'm going to buy my own toiletries when I'm in college, but I'm not going to practice it now. I'm going to count on my mom to tell me when I need new toothpaste and get it. And that's not a great plan because there's so much new stuff that you're taking in college. And if you're not fluent in just the automatic ability to provide yourself with self-care, it's just another area that is new to you, and it takes a toll. Um, so back to this, managing a routine, your routine needs as far as doing laundry, managing your budget, a sleep schedule. I cannot emphasize that enough. I know so many students struggle with navigating bedtimes and wake up times, and there are accommodations that could be made in choosing your class schedule in college so you don't have an 8 o'clock class, but there will be steps to take to do that. And then, but you're still going to need to maintain a sleep schedule so that you can function at your best. Managing medications is a very important thing as far as knowing when you need to refill your medication, knowing how and when to take it, and all without prompting. So those are things that students can practice um, in high school as well. Self-awareness. So the self-advocacy piece, I will say, is probably the most important skill that a student can have in college. It gets broken down into these other areas, but the ability to independently, without prompting, know when a student needs support, when you need support as a student, and being able to ask and communicate to the appropriate person what your need is in a timely way. So if you've been studying for a test but struggling and you've waited to the day before the test is about to happen, and that's when you're deciding to ask for help. That's the timeliness thing. It's great that you ask for help, but we need all of those elements put together. So breaking that down, you could see that self-awareness is that realization that I'm going to need help. Or, sometimes it happens when you're in a lecture and you're like, I don't understand anything that's going on here. That's that self awareness that needs to prompt a self advocacy or a next step. And then the communication. Sometimes that's challenging for students. I work with a lot of students who are shy, they have social anxiety. It's not easy for them to walk up to a stranger. And it's totally understandable, particularly at the beginning of school. Everybody's a stranger, but that's the kind of thing that we prepare for so that the student has an existing tutor that they could reach out to, but so that they're comfortable with and they can communicate with them and that person can guide them to getting the help that they need. We talked a little bit about the timeliness of knowing when you need help, but knowing when that help needs to be, in place. And the ability to self reflect and demonstrate openness and feedback is so important. Um, there are when I talk to students that are in college, and I ask them about their experiences, and it is amazing to hear when students are able to say, I really bombed this class or this semester, but I took in the feedback, I heard what people had to say, and I made changes. So it's not about having the challenge. For many students, it's the ability to self-reflect and then to be able to be open to that and make the changes that are needed. So nobody is thinking that any student is going to go off to college, 100% ready in all of their areas, and do amazing. But these are things that you can see around the self-advocacy and the self-reflection, that when things do go sideways, when you're not understanding something, do you know what to do? Do you have the skills? Some people might call it resilience, to bounce back from those times where things didn't go well, take in the feedback and move forward. And those are really, really important skills to have for college. The social emotional piece of regulating your emotions, there's a lot going on in college. It's easy to get overwhelmed, and being aware of how you regulate your emotions and what you need to be your best self. So some students are very aware and they'll say, I need my own room. Like, I need my own space to decompress so I will be able to regulate my emotions. And that's something that not every college is going to offer your own room, and there are steps to take to get a single room, but it is something that it's just a strategy that some students will use. Being aware of your mental health. When I work with students who navigate mental health challenges, and one of the questions I'll typically ask is, who notices when the student is struggling with their mental health? Is it the student that says, I'm really having a hard time. Mom, I need to take a day off of school. I need to see my therapist, or whatever it is the student needs? Or is it the parent is saying, I'm noticing this? And then the student may respond, but the parent's not going to be in college to notice. And so that's an area that we want to really build up in the student to be able to understand when they need support around their mental health. The social interactions at school, at college, is very important. It's roommates and peers and professors. Um, and things can get bumpy with roommates and peers, or a professor may not be a great fit for you. And these are all kind of connected items, because then who are you going to communicate with in a timely way when you're struggling with your professor? And those are important things that they all kind of come together as you should be seeing from these examples. And connecting to community. Some students who tend to be more, they prefer to be more on their own. They're not interested in a large social life, and that's totally fine. They should follow who they are and not be somebody that they are not. But there is a piece around the success of college and the connection to community. But the student can say what that looks like. So the research is clear that students who are engaged in their community, their college community in some way, will manage their 4 years and matriculate and graduate with more success than those who are just more isolated. They're not attached to their community. But that can look very unique for each student. So that might look like a Dungeons and Dragons group that you've joined, and that may be your only connection with the community, but is your connection to the community, and that's all that you need. It's not the number of friends or how you spend your time. It's that, is there a commonality that you have that you can relate to with other opportunities on campus, big or small? Um, and that's a really important piece to keep in mind. I work with sometimes students be like, that's okay, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to go to class and come back to my room. But what they don't really understand is that when they do that at home, they have a family around and they have people to talk to when they want to. But in college, when you do that, there's nobody there. And that, I think it's hard for young people to realize, really understand, how challenging that alone feeling can be. Um, so the academic skills and time management, ability to prioritize tasks. So you have papers and things due and tests, and you need to be able to understand the timing of them. And this is a common challenge in high school as well. How do you prioritize all the things that you have going on and what's due and what's expected of you? Your organizational skills, making use of calendars, checking emails, knowing what's expected of you and keeping on top of them. Working with tutors is a great way to build the organizational skills and help you with a lot of these things that we're talking about. If you are working with tutors while in high school, one of the things that I often see is that the tutors are kind of taking over and saying, let me open up your backpack. Let's see what you have. Oh, it looks like you need to work on this. And then the tutor kind of runs the meeting, and the student appreciates it because they get a lot done and they didn't really have to think about it, but yet they are handing in the things and all is well. But being in college, it's important for the student to take ownership and have agency over their learning. And so what we would be looking for is the student sitting down with the tutor and saying, I have 3 tests coming up in the next 2 weeks. Can you help me figure out the order that I should study these things? Or I'm having trouble with this other test. Can you help me? And that is the student taking ownership over their learning, which is going to be so helpful for the college setting. Um, I also work with students who don't have a lot of study skills. They tend to they listen to the lecture and they do, some work, they do the homework, but they don't learn to study, which would mean, taking notes on a chapter, reading over those notes, spending time on that. There are some students who they have their learning profile such that they need really good study skills. There are some other students whose learning profile is not that. And so they make it to 11th and 12th grade and they really don't have study skills, but they've done well academically. And that's going to end at some point. It may not be till, they're a senior in college, but at some point the work in college is going to go beyond the ability to just hear it and be able to do well on the test. And so building those foundational study skills, even though it may not seem important now, it's gonna be important at some point. Okay. So here we are. So that's an overview of some of the college readiness skills to really start to think about. And what the student can bring to the college experience is, I think, worth going through. So, a level of readiness that will allow the student to succeed in a college environment. That's all the things that we were just talking about, that you're showing up prepared to take responsibility for the expectations of the independence that is a college or post-secondary environment. And also to bring with that an openness to learning and engaging in opportunities. So now we're getting into not only the transition to college and college readiness, but what is going to help you be successful. Because it's not just about being ready for college and showing up in college. That's not the end goal here. The career success is the prize. The prize is really I was ready for college. I went to college. I navigated college well enough that I was able to ease myself into a career that I am now in, and I'm happy. And that's what we want for all students. So when we get all excited about I got into college, that's awesome, but that's not really the focus here. The real end goal is a career and life satisfaction. And so how do we get that? Part of it is showing up to college ready enough that you can navigate college and think about these other things. Sometimes students, they kind of white knuckle it through college. They figure out how to get through college. They do it, and that's what they do. They were students. Um, but that's all that they weren't able to do an internship or open their mind to other things or deal with career services because they were just so focused on they thought the prize was, but I graduate from college. And then when I've seen students, they said, but I've graduated from college, but they really have not developed the career skills that they're going to need for the next step. And that's very demoralizing for students. So I really work hard to highlight this because I don't want to see that happen with students. I want students to know that college is a stepping stone for your next place, and we want you, which is typically career. And so we want you to be able to make use of that college experience so it eases you into a career that will make you happy. Um, and so that means that you're going to need to have an openness to learning new things and engaging in new opportunities that will expose you to experiences that can lead you to a career that you're going to find satisfying. So having a focus on the possibilities of what comes next informs and motivates the here and now. So you kind of need to be thinking about how you see yourself after college so that you can inform yourself in the here and now in high school and in college and be motivated towards moving in that direction as opposed to just I'm here, I'm just going to do what I have now, and then I'm here and I'm going to do what I have in the next, and then you just go through it and that, but you're not really thinking ahead. So having conversations with people in your life, taking assessments, there's different career assessments, goal planning, having a discussion around your own personal individual goals, which you could totally change, right? But at least you're having goals or interests that are informed by what's important to you. Um, and then, that kind of thing will help students lead to and through their college journey and beyond. So I'm hoping that this slide kind of gives context to all the things that we've talked about so far of where are you in high school? Where are you going in college? How is that different? How can you prepare? And then why are we doing all of this? We're doing all of this so that you can have a college experience that will be able to offer you opportunities for finding a career and have success after college. So things that you could do now are reviewing your areas of strength and really think about your goals and really take ownership over your strengths. Most of the time when I ask students to list their strengths, they're really good at it. They know what they're good at. And I think that's awesome. And it's a pleasure for me to hear all of the unique strengths that students have. Sometimes students struggle with that. And then that's a great place to start of really being able to take ownership over what you're good at. And sometimes parents can be very helpful with that. And then thinking about the goals that you might want to have for yourself for college. Sometimes so I was just talking to a family where what the students' goals were for college were really a community college. Like there was really not, she wasn't interested, she doesn't like reading, she doesn't open a book. Her goals could really be met at a community college. And so thinking about what the options are, and then that student can see a trajectory of I'm going to go to community college, I'm going to focus on development and X, Y, and Z, and then I can see the job that I'm going to get. So it's not about Doesn't always have to be a four-year college. It doesn't even have to be college at all. There's all different kinds of programs and opportunities, but the message is the same of where are you now? Are you prepared for where you need to go to build the skills for the career that's important to you? And then if you have identified areas of growth around your college readiness, thinking through who can help you with these things. Would you benefit from a tutor maybe at your school? They might offer some tutoring or coaching that you want to take advantage of at a community center, or there's some online resources that could really be helpful to build the skill sets that students might need to navigate and manage their areas of challenge. So the goal is for you to use your time in high school to be prepared for the expectations of college, so you have the experience and the future that you hope for. So I think I zippied through this. I also want to say that if you want to look at, actually, I have to fix it. I just noticed that my website wasn't awesome, but I've recently added, there's a whole readiness section and part of it works, but there's another part that's not working. Um, but it lists like a more in-depth thing about the skills needed for college and college readiness skills. So there's a page, like I said, that I just realized is not working. So I'll go back and fix that. But still, there's other stuff in there that might be helpful for people to look at. And that's my contact information. So do we have any questions or should I stop sharing?
We do have questions, and thank you so much for that. Uh, there was so much information in that, but it was so accessibly presented. My words are I'm not finding my words tonight here, but I thank you for that because you made it understandable for us. And before we get to the questions, I just want to direct everyone's attention to the chat where I have put the links for the English evaluation and the Spanish evaluation. Again, four quick questions. If you just click on it and kind of like half listen and or maybe three-quarters listen and a quarter fill them out because they're not hard questions. We'd really appreciate it because, as I said, it just keeps allowing us to keep doing what we do. So, the first question, Dr. Schwartz, is if parents have a conservatorship, is it easier for parents to support the children in college? And that kind of packs a wallop.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say because I know conservatorships are different, right? Like they each have different elements to them. So it's so in general, it's hard to say about a specific situation. But if the student is living at home and going into community college, it's I don't know that it's gonna have that big of an impact on um was the question about like, was there anything that the parents need to do, or does that impact on their readiness? Or
The question was more, is it easier for the parents to support the children in college? And I think meaning, if you have a conservatorship, you have a certain rights, right?
yeah,
That you have taken or that you're supporting
right.
your young
Yeah,
adult to be able
so
to go on.
you'll have access, I'm assuming, to their grades, and you'll know, you could probably log into their Canvas or whatever that they have, so see if something's late or the grades and things like that. But unlike in high school where you can kind of set up a meeting with the teacher, I don't know that that is going to be the situation with the college. So it's really going to be working with the student when you get advance notice probably when things are going sideways to push in support for the student would be an advantage. Disability services offices will probably be another active resource for you because through the conservatorship, they'll probably be able to speak with you and you'll say, you'll explain what the challenge is, and then they'll let you know what their limitations are. Are they able to advocate for that student in that particular context with that professor? That's going to be individualized. And so I would say it definitely would make things, you'll have more opportunities to advocate for and with the student, but there's going to be limits in a college setting, regardless of the conservatorship, just because of the structure of college that you didn't see in high school.
And the reason why I said it packs a wallop of a question is that from a parent's perspective, and I know myself, it's really hard to let go, right? But if you don't let go and you don't let them fail, which is really hard for us to wrap our heads around, we don't want that for our young adults or our adults or our teens or our youth. But that's how we all learn, right? How do you best learn? From your mistakes. So when you say, is it easier to support them? Maybe, but maybe you just need to become that passenger instead of the driver. We have a training on moving from driver to passenger as
Yeah,
we
I
enter new
totally agree.
years.
And I will also add, though, to the parent to really think through if you had a magic wand and you can highly support your student through the college experience and then they graduate, what next? What is that student? Now they're gonna know they've spent so many years being a student, and that's what they know now. And then we're gonna be saying to the student, now we got to get you a job. Completely different skill set, completely everything is different. And then how is that going to be for the student? I mean, if it was me, I'd be like, whoa, what just happened? Like, I was rocking college. Look at me. I graduated college, and now you're moving me to this other thing. And so, and I've seen that struggle for students when they graduate college, but they realize that they do not have the skill set, and it's nothing a parent could do at that point, or to get them the job, to be at the job for them. That is a tough time, and I would like to, encourage people to think ahead like that when you're making that decision, because it's just a having been a passenger with many families in that it's not something I want to encourage.
Okay, thank you. Um, how can we as parents help our young adults build study skills?
Great question. So the first part about that is the students. Well, I mean, it's so hard to say because I don't know the student, but oftentimes they don't need to study. And so they're thinking like, why am I doing this when I don't need to do this? And because they know the material, they're going to get an A on the test without those study skills. So what is the point? And the student's got a point, right? Like, how do you do that? And so what we've talked about, what I've done with other students is we'll have them sign up for a class like a Coursera class or a community college class that is going while they're in high school that's going to challenge them. And so, and they'll do that with a tutor. So the student has like a safety net of being like, oh,
Mm,
I don't get that. And then they have somebody saying, okay, so let's look at what we're going to do. Let's reread that passage. How do we do that? How do we take Cornell notes on that? Like, how do we
mm,
close read on that and really dive into it? And then but they'll learn that in an area that they like this should be an area of their strength, and then they'll learn study skills. So even if they don't use them all the time when they're in college and they're bumping up at that class, they'll be like, okay, I've done this before. And also very importantly, I have felt this before. Because I know for me, like I, had my own set of, learning challenges and such. So not knowing something from a very young age was, of course, I didn't know that. Like, that's just me. Like, I had to work hard and study, whatever. And other people didn't. So it was not a foreign feeling for me to say, I don't know how to do that math. Let me get a tutor. But if you don't know that feeling and you go through many, many years of school and that feeling, and then you get that feeling, it's scary. And
mm.
you just feel like, but I always know, but I'm supposed to know. And particularly if society says, but you're so smart and and so it's important to understand that it's okay to not know and to work on study skills. And I don't know if that answers this person's question, but
Yeah, and then there's a sort of to piggyback on that, if your young adult's a senior and still struggles with study skills, what would you suggest on how to choose a college? And uh, then also someone is saying, what approach would you recommend in the choosing? I think that's what they're asking.
yeah, so you want to look at readiness and reading, like we just talked about, and readiness informs fit. So sometimes students will choose a college close to home because they want to come home on weekends because socially they may not be ready to just be gone. They need that family and that community, and that's really going to be their best because we don't want them isolated. Or there could be a number of areas of fit, like the academics is important, the financial fit, and financial fit needs to take in a bunch of different things. It's the cost of the college. Oftentimes the students that I work with, they take 5 years to graduate instead of 4 years, so that's another year of tuition. Oftentimes there's tutoring or comprehensive support programs that a college might offer that may make that college a fit for a student, but it's going to be costly. So you're weighing like fit, there's a financial fit too. So if you're weighing all of those variables, but there are colleges that offer some really wonderful comprehensive support programs where they will have academic guidance, tutoring, social support. They even have neurodiversity housing, if that would be a thing for that a student can benefit from. Sound sensitive students might do well in those types of environments. And so looking at all of those variables, so I'm working with a family where he doesn't really want to go far from home, but there's a school on the other side of the country that is actually the perfect fit for his academics. They have the neurodiversity support program that is a perfect fit for him. But what seals the deal is that he has close family there. So even though he's far from home, he has family there. So every fit story is different because there's different variables. Some care about the financial piece, some don't. Some, are really that there's four schools that offer the major that they want. But, so there's always compromises, and looking at fit is it's actually, it might be helpful. The Stanford Neurodiversity Summit is coming up, and there is I don't know if I could put like a thing in the link in it in the chat, but there's a panel that I'm going to be on Saturday. It's what I wish I would have known. Um, and it's college students or post-college students talking about this type of thing. And I'm talking about a section on FIP, but somebody else is doing readiness. There's, different areas that we'll be discussing. So that might be a nice add-on conversation for you to participate in, and it's virtual if you want. You're on mute.
I am putting that link in as I type and don't talk to anybody because I'm on mute. But I just want to draw people's attention again to the links for the evaluations in the chat. I'm sorry, I tend to be a bit annoying with these, but I don't have nearly enough yet. So if you could please just click on them and answer those 4 questions, we'd appreciate it. Dr. Marci, do you recommend students to go straight to a community college rather than a 4-year school?
No, I mean, community college is great, but I don't just recommend that. It's really a unique situation with the student. Sometimes the community college path and living at home for the first couple of years is absolutely the right thing. The student benefits from the support that the parents can offer, and they can ease into building their readiness skills. But one of the downsides of that is the social environment. It's very hard to have that social experience, and some students really want that. And if you're living at a 4-year college with a campus and that dorm life, you're going to have that more vibrant social life. Another piece of it is that sometimes students they stay at home, and so they don't grow developmentally because mom's still cooking dinner, and life is the same, somebody else is doing laundry, and they're not feeling the pressure to step up and build those skills. And now we're 2, 3 years older, and it's harder to then say, no, 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 you need to take out the garbage. And so some students, they want to be independent. They will work on those skills while at home, and it'll be fine. But other students, the energy is not that. And so that could be a challenge. But a nice compromise is that there are a number of community colleges in the country that offer housing. So you can be at a community college where you could even get just a certificate. Like you can get an AA degree. You don't have to do that for the 4 year intensive. You have to take your English and your history and your math, but you could also live away from home in a dorm and if you're ready for those independent living skills. So it's not really all or nothing. There are ways to look at it, but it's really dependent on the unique needs of the student.
Okay, thanks. And then, w- in your opinion, when should high schools start planning for goals to help kids with college readiness? And as an adjunct to that, does every college have disability or student services to help students of various abilities?
Yes, so I would say definitely once the student lands in high school, it's great to start building those college readiness skills and the student attending their IEP meetings, their 504 meetings, and really building their self-advocacy skills and being able to talk to what their learning strengths and challenges are. So in those meetings, being able to say, I need extended time on tests because I have slow processing speed, and that student is practicing that self advocacy, that self awareness, the communication skills. So many things are happening when a student does that in an IEP meeting. Um, and also, there's opportunities that the high school can do to, work experience or other opportunities at within the school, within the high school, to build responsibility, organizational skills, checking your calendar, things like that. So all of that would be great. Um, as far as disability services, every college that receives federal funding has a disability services office. And so what happens is that once you decide where you're going to college, you're going to take your documentation, which would be your 504 plan, your IEP, or if you had private testing, that's great too. And you submit it to disability services. So you would go on, like if you're going to San Jose State, you look up San Jose State Disability Services, it's going to pop up and they're going to have information about how do you submit your documentation. You follow that, and then disability services will reach out to the student. And this is all we're hitting the self advocacy. They're going to want to meet with the students often on Zoom and say, tell us what kinds of services have you been getting in high school? What are you looking for in college? Sometimes there's a form that they fill out. What did you get in high school? Do you want to get this in college? And that's something that the student's going to need to do. Um, and those are basic services that every college is going to offer. And those are like extended time on tests and tests in a quiet room and things like that. But there are colleges, as I mentioned, that offer a separate program that sometimes has a fee, oftentimes has a fee, but not always, where it's more comprehensive and they have eyes on that student. And the student feels known and seen and they have it's almost like a giant resource room where the student can get support.
Okay, thanks. And then are there resources available for students already in college with regards to study skills, executive functioning skills, self-advocacy skills? And is there a reading or a math level and help with attaining or keeping that reading and math level at different schools?
So, not sure about the reading and math level, except to say that when you're entering college, they will typically give you a placement test. And if you take that, say in math, for example, and if you score in a certain way, they will put you in a math class, but it may be a non-credit class, more of a remedial class. Um, and so it brings you up to that level. I don't think you actually have to do that class, but they're offering you that opportunity to level up on in those areas where you might need that. And all of the colleges will offer tutoring and support for the academics. So they'll have tutoring centers, math labs, writing labs. The professor, if you go to a professor and say, I'm struggling in your class, biology is really hard for me, I need some support. Oftentimes they have a list of previous students, like so a student from the previous year who would be willing to tutor that student. So it's not hard to find tutoring and academic support in college. You just need to ask for it. There are some that also offer executive functioning supports as part of the disability services. So that's something. I know Santa Clara University just recently added that. It's a great resource. Some colleges actually have learning specialists that you can meet with. So colleges try their best to offer resources for students to do as well as they can academically, but it's really up to the student to say that they need it and then seek it out.
The,
You're on mute again. Yeah.
the barking dogs get me every time. Okay. Just again, links for evaluations still in the chat there. We're almost to about 60%, 60, which I love. So just get us a little bit more, 70% I'd love. And then how does a family of parents and youth investigate and find college disability services that relate to specific challenges that the student might have? For example, if a child has anxiety or executive functioning challenges, how do they determine what college is a good fit?
So those types of challenges that you listed as an example, like anxiety, every college is used to, every disability service is going to be able to navigate supports around anxiety. Um, and sometimes, it shows up differently in different students. It might be dorm or housing related, it might be classroom time related, it might be um, taking, but you don't it's not high school where you need to take a break if you want to leave the class, like you leave the class, depending on the size of the class. um, but what happens is that once you submit the documentation, say for anxiety, for example, to disability services, and they talk with you about what you would like, and then they're going to talk amongst themselves in disability services, and they're going to write you a letter, and it's going to say, dear student Johnny, we're offering you these accommodations to support you in college. It doesn't say a diagnosis, so no one's going to know about the anxiety, but that student every semester gets that letter to every professor. So if there's a unique accommodation that the student has, that they can wear headphones or something like that, and then we don't want the professor saying, take down those headphones or whatever the accommodation is, then the student will have gotten that information. The professor will know it. If the professor has a problem with it, he could talk to disability services and say, I've never had this before. And then they will educate him or her on, this is a disability service that we've sanctioned. And so that's the approach. And so you don't, with those examples that you gave, there's not a, you don't, you should ask a number of colleges that you're interested in about, and contact disability services. And if you have some accommodations that you're thinking about, absolutely call them and see if that's something that they will be offering. You should be cautioned, though, that not every disability services office will talk to you unless you are an accepted student. So what sometimes we'll do is that the students apply. I mean, I've gotten to know the colleges that, and who's got the warm hug and who doesn't. And then once the student has their list of accepted colleges, then the parent and the student can go visit or call them and say, I'm thinking about coming to your college. I'm looking for this accommodation. Is this possible? And they will talk to you. I've had a neuropsychologist and I sat on the phone with a disability services office for an hour going over the accommodations that we felt the student needed to be successful. And before that student accepted the college, we wanted to know, like, is what they're going to offer going to be in line with what the student can tolerate? And the student needed to make some compromises. There were things that they wanted, but they weren't going to get. But in the end, they knew what they were going to get, and it was a thoughtful process. So you could definitely do that. I don't know
Mm.
if that's helpful.
I think it's very helpful. And then at one point, I think that's when you were talking about how to help with study skills. You talked about building trust, and somebody was asking if you could elaborate on that. How do you build trust?
So the trust in this, I think it was about the student trusting the process. I probably didn't say it
Mm,
like that,
mm,
but But when you're telling a student that they need to build study skills and they have no history of needing study skills, why are they going to listen? And so that's an understandable challenge that the student has. But when I think when students are talking to me and they know that this is what I do, and then I'm giving them opportunities to, let's take a class so you can practice not knowing, so that you're forced to practice study
Mm.
skills in a safe environment in something you like to learn. It's developing an environment where they're gonna feel comfortable stepping into and failing if they need to, because there's not a lot of consequences. It's like a Coursera class, or like we
Mm.
want to make it so it's fun. Sometimes students do one-on-one education, and that may be an opportunity to do that. Like, okay, have that one-on-one person like slam you with stuff, like give you stuff, and then how are you going to um can you communicate and advocate and say, that's too much, teacher? Like, I need to take this slower. That's practicing self-advocating. And then the teacher can say, well, let's break this down for you. How could you work on your study skills so you could do this? And that openness and trust with the process can really be helpful.
Okay. And somebody saying, I wish I knew this earlier. Are you still open to taking a senior child? I think they mean someone who might be not the typical college age, but you can go to college at
No,
any
they
time, right?
probably mean, I'm thinking that they mean a high school senior.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, if they are meaning a high school senior, you can just send me an email. Um, and
What if
I'll
they're meeting somebody in their 20s? Here and see. A
actually,
high
so I
high
work with
school
students.
senior, high school
Yeah.
senior.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But even if they are and they're trying, like I work with transfer students too, whether they did the community college for 2 or 3 years and then they're ready to transfer out, or they're unhappy at their college. So that's something to help out with as well. So
Okay.
for sure.
And I think this is a great question to end on. How will we know that college is a right path for our kids if school academic is not easy for our kids?
Yeah. And that's where we want to make sure we're exposing the student to alternative paths and seeing what their interest is. I mean, sometimes it's hard. If they want to be a physics professor, they're going to kind of have to go to college and do that. But if their goals are different, it's pretty, there's more and more opportunities for students to go away and learn without it being the typical four-year college setting. Like I said, there's community colleges that are, you can go um, live in a dorm. There are colleges that you live in the on the campus and you live in the dorm and everybody's living together, but some of those students might be community college, they're getting their AA degree. So they go to a different campus because it's more tech focused, but they're in college. Like nobody's gonna, oh, look, you're at that campus. And so there's also micro credentials that colleges are offering. So you could just take these smaller classes and you stack them so that you can build skill sets in an area, but you still have that I'm away from home and I'm practicing my independence and I'm building towards a career, but I don't have to take that math class that I hate or
Mm.
so there's definitely ways to navigate a next step that doesn't have to be the traditional path.
Okay. Well, the clock on the screen tells us it's 7:31, and people who have come to these events before know I really try to end on time. So I want to thank Dr. Marci for her wisdom and for her thinking fast on her feet and answering all those questions. Thank you, Beatrice, for interpreting. Thank you all for coming and asking such provoking questions. And you're getting some thank yous, you're getting lots of hearts. People are saying,
Right.
wish I knew this 2 years ago. Thank you, thank you, thank you.